I played Cleave of Rage Berserker in Affliction League from level 1 to 100, through 39 of the 40 Affliction challenges with a few vital gear pieces bought in Trade League. Without a doubt, this was the most fun I've ever had in Path of Exile 1, and I would like to share the build with all of you, clearly and succinctly. The entire build revolves around building up rage stacks to increase your cleave's area of effect, spending rage with Berserk to get big damage, then building rage back up again. It's an interesting, speedy, clear heavy, and relatively safe pseudo-melee build. I will lead with the nerfs and consequential power reductions to this build from Affliction to Necropolis though, so you can bounce if they sound too strong for your tastes. Essentially, we lost about 30% of Cleave of Rage AoE due to this line in the patch notes, and there's some funky stuff going on with Warcries, but due to the way we actually utilize Warcries with Cleave of Rage, it's not too worrying for us. We might also have some minor mana issues, so we might need to drop one of our many auras. I still think it's strong. I still think it will be fun. If you are not interested and it sounds too weak for you, Talkative, take off now. But if you're interested, please continue watching. I'm not using a Mage Blood as a base in this build. I did not fund it via magic find farming in Affliction or with tons of divines. It's a pseudo melee PoE character with huge clear, and it's quite cheap to get going. It's also massively fun. This video breaks down into 5 sections. The table of contents with timestamps is on screen now. Please feel free to skip around if you'd like. Instead of a dedicated showcase section, interesting content with Cleave of Rage shall play in the background throughout the entire video. Halamoana, my fellow exiles, I am Try. If you enjoy what you see and what you hear, please subscribe to the channel. Now, let's talk some Path of Exile 1. I managed to down 39 out of 3.23's 40 challenges. The only task I was not able to complete using Cleave of Rage was tearing down PoE's uber bosses. Now, that might be partially a skill issue and a build issue. I'm not sure I have the skill to down these without insane DPS, as I did on something like Rage Vortex or Frostblade's Trickster. In my character's current state, on the mid-budget spec, it's not at that level yet. Aside from deep delving and mega juicing maps with wisps, scarabs, and everything else you could do in Affliction League, Cleave of Rage Berserker gets the job done. You can do Wave 13 ultimatums, 8 mod T16 maps, any pinnacle boss, temple farming, or what I did, invitation farming. Your cleave is nearly half of the Maven's Crucible, which leads to quite quick formed, twisted, forgotten, or Elder Slayer's invitations. I even downed the Feared for the first time ever with my own build. Thusly, unless you would like to keep to ranged or spell playstyles and easily farm uber bosses on repeat for their sick but scarcely dropping loot, this build should work for you. Let's move on to the low budget version, also called the League Start Simulation. I League started Cleave of Rage and Affliction and it went decently well. Armed with the knowledge I have now, here's what you should do if you're starting a fresh Marauder for this build. Level with Ground Slam, then Sunder until you get Bone Shatter. Then stick with that until you can pick up the Transfigured Cleave of Rage. I repeat, do not level normal Cleave with this build. Only swap over to Cleave once you have the Transfigured Gem. It's a struggle, and going the typical melee Ground Slam to Sunder to Bone Shatter League Start works swimmingly. The entire time you're not using Cleave of Rage, just use a two-hander with high physical damage. It will bonk you all the way to Cleave of Rage. Once you pick up Cleave of Rage, swap to a sword and axe, both with high phys damage, and begin looking for your initial core uniques, whether it's for cheap on trade or a lucky world drop. The uniques are as follows. Rigwald's Savagery. This will boost your damage tremendously and serve as your axe until the end of your mid-budget progression. Lion's Roar. This will boost your defenses and damage, as well as keep enemies at bay with your massive cleave AoE. Bear's Girdle. This will increase your max rage stacks, boosting your damage and clear by a good deal and serve as your best in-slot belt until something like Mage Blood. Varunastra. This acts as both a sword and axe, plus it has decent damage attached. It'll serve you well at low budget. Red Blade Banner. As fast as possible, pick this up and start using your amazing rage generation tech. Instead of building up rage slowly at the start of a map, you can now swap to Red Blade Banner. Use a Warcry, get to near max rage stacks, then swap back to your axe and sword. It feels amazing. Thread of Hope, medium. Socketing this on the left side of the tree allows you to hit a suite of powerful passives along its ring. And finally, some non-uniques. Evasion/armor gear with resistances and spell suppression. This will keep you from dying. The POB in the description includes this low-budget simulation passive tree for leveling and the start of maps, as well as the maxed out passive trees. The only extra note here is to kill all bandits for 2 extra passive points, and to remember during this section of the build, we are not crit based, we are using resolute and precise technique. This gear and passive point setup should easily bring you into yellows and early reds without any issues. Figure out your links quick once you get a 6th link. Here are the gems and links you should use in total. Cleave of Rage, melee physical damage, brutality, multi-strike, increased critical damage, rage, enduring cry, leap slam, life tap, pride, alone, berserk, alone, assassin's mark, mark on hit, determination, alone, precision, arrogance, dread banner, alone, blood and sand, alone, ancestral war chief, ancestral protector, multiple totems, blood rage, val molten shell, cast win damage taken. As you move to the mid-budget setup, swap brutality support with its awakened version and do the same with melee physical damage support. Now you're prepared for the mid-budget or steady state Cleave of Rage. As you progress into pinnacles and easier clearing of red maps, you'll likely want to transition away from resolute technique and precise technique and over to a crit-based build. Now, start looking for a savior. Whether it's farming Cirrus yourself or buying it on trade, you need it for a big damage boost and to play PoE with your boys. Remember, do not buy a corrupted savior with resolute technique on it. To spawn the boys' clones that'll cleave with you, you must crit. Resolute technique disables critical hits entirely. People will try to scam you. I fell for it last league. Oopsie. The next piece of gear you'll want is a Bottled Faith Sulfur Flask. It's a nice automated way to boost your crits and increase your defenses just a tad. Alongside these 2 items, continue to hone your rare gear with Eldritch Currency, Aura boosts on your chest piece, Fizz as Elemental on your helm, attack speed or extra rage generation and spell suppression on your gloves, and Brittle Ground while moving on your boots. You also need to get the non-channeling skills have minus mana cost mod on your rings too, so you don't constantly hit 0 mana while cleaving away. You'll also want to automate your flasks as best you can with instilling orbs, making them activate when charges reach full and refill on critical strikes. I recommend 1 health pot, Lion's Roar Granite Flask, Bottled Face Sulfur Flask, Jade Pot, and a Diamond Pot too. You can also put your ailment defenses on these potions. Also, make sure whatever amulet you're using has Panopticon anointed to help out with your ancestral totem's damage and really your own damage. Alrighty, you've passed what I did in Affliction in terms of skill, farming capability, or time invested. Where do you go from here? Well, due to some constant research on PoE Ninja about what the best cleavers among us are doing, plus some general game knowledge, here's exactly what you're looking for. First up is Awakened Multi-Strike Support. It's a huge but expensive damage boost. Afterward, you would like to grab a pair of Ralakesh's Impatience boots, but this requires a rearranging of other gear and defenses. Don't toss your rare boots until your certain resistances, suppression, and movement speed are covered. Next on the shopping list is a perfect Paradoxica. There will probably be lots of Katarina farmers this league, thanks to the Veiled Orb, so hopefully it remains rather cheap throughout the league. You're looking for double damage, fizz damage, impale chance, and critical hit chance in the random Veiled mods. The 4th item to try and grab is a well-crafted Psychotic Axe. You can buy one up or craft it yourself. Buy an item level 85 base or find one in Heist and perform the Ancient Fizz Weapon crafting exercise with essences and Veiled Orbs. We want as many attack speed, fizz damage, added fizz to attacks, and critical mods as possible on this wild axe. One of the last 2 items I could grab if I had an unlimited budget would be a Forbidden Flame and Flesh with Flawless Savagery or Unbreakable or Unrelenting allocated. All of those are big boosts to the build in terms of either damage or defenses. Finally, as with almost all builds out there, I would go for a Mage Blood as the pinnacle god tier piece of gear. Had to add that in. Okay, yes, it's time for the 3 big warnings I have about this build that I'd like to reiterate. First of all, Cleave of Rage is melee in the sense that it scales as a melee build. This means you need great weapons, and you need to upkeep buffs on yourself to deal substantial damage. The most important upkeep buffs are your ancestral totems, which provide a substantial damage boost, especially versus bosses, but Berserk and your actual rage and Warcry juggling is important too. Next, and this is on a League Start or SSF scenario, it relies on a Transfigured Gem. If you don't have Cleave of Rage quick, the whole build stalls out. I do not recommend using Cleave until you get Cleave of Rage. I'd level with Ground Slam, then Sunder, and then Bone Shatter instead. Finally, this build was nerfed in 3.24 as mentioned at the top of the video. Please keep that in mind. If I have the time, I will run through Necropolis with Cleave of Rage Berserker again. But I think I'll be starting as a dual strike Slayer. If you do decide to play this build, I am sure you'll have a swell time. Now, this was my first real build guide. I hope it helped you, and I hope you have a wonderful time in Necropolis League. Good luck. Here's a tremendous thanks to everyone who watched this video to the end, and a massive thank you to each and every one of my supporters. Additionally, did you like this video? If you did, please throw it a like, subscribe, hit the sub notification bell, share it with your fellow exiles, and leave a comment for the unbiased algorithm. Anyways, that's all for this video. Talakura, totally sane exiles.